Michael Douglas wrote goodbye letters to his children, sealed them, put them in his desk drawer. When a cancer survivor asked him about facing death, Michael revealed he was ready to mail those letters and end everything himself. The Tonight Show studio was alive with its signature Tuesday evening energy in Manhattan. The familiar blue and gold lighting created that warm, electric atmosphere that had made the show a late-night institution for decades. Michael Douglas sat across from Jimmy Fallon, both engaged in what appeared to be a typical celebrity interview about his legendary career and recent projects. The Roots had just finished their smooth musical transition, and the cameras were rolling hot. Jimmy's iconic curved desk gleamed under the professional studio lights, while the New York City skyline sparkled through the backdrop windows like a constellation of Hollywood dreams and entertainment history. Michael looked every inch the distinguished actor he had become. At 81, he still possessed that unmistakable presence and sharp intelligence that had captivated audiences for over 5 decades, though now seasoned with the wisdom and gravity that came from a lifetime of both triumph and survival. Dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit with his silver hair styled impeccably, he radiated the same compelling authenticity that had made him one of cinema's most respected figures. "So, Michael," Jimmy said, his animated gestures punctuating every word, "at 81, you're still making movies, still as sharp as ever. You've had this incredible career spanning decades. Wall Street, Fatal Attraction, Behind the Candelabra. When you look at everything you've accomplished, what keeps you motivated to keep creating?" Michael's eyes held that characteristic blend of intensity and hard-earned perspective. "Well, Jimmy, I think once you've faced your own mortality in a real way, every day becomes a gift. Every project, every moment with family, every conversation like this one. It all takes on a different meaning when you've been reminded that none of it is guaranteed." The audience was clearly moved by his presence and the weight of his words, several older fans in the front rows nodding with obvious recognition and respect for this Hollywood veteran. "And you're referring to your health challenges," Jimmy said with obvious sensitivity and respect. "You've been very open about your battle with throat cancer. That must have been an incredibly difficult period. How did that experience change your perspective on life and work?" Michael's expression became more thoughtful, more reflective. "It changes everything, Jimmy. When you're told you have cancer, especially in a place as personal as your throat, your voice, everything you thought you knew about yourself gets thrown out the window, you realize how fragile we all are." The conversation was flowing naturally, touching on his recent film projects, his marriage to Catherine Zeta-Jones, and how he had approached life differently after his recovery. The studio audience was completely engaged, hanging on every word from one of Hollywood's most enduring stars. "I have to say, your strength during that period was inspiring to a lot of people," Jimmy continued warmly. "The way you handled the treatment, the way you stayed positive and kept fighting, that kind of courage in the face of something so scary, where does that come from?" Michael paused for a moment, something flickering across his features. Not the polished performer's confidence, but something more complex, more vulnerable. "Courage is a funny word, Jimmy. People think courage means you're not afraid, but sometimes courage just means you're too exhausted to be afraid anymore." It was in this moment of reflection about fear and survival that a voice from the audience cut through the studio atmosphere with the raw vulnerability and recognition of someone who had walked the same terrifying path. "Mr. Douglas?" Both Michael and Jimmy turned toward the sound. In the fourth row, slightly right of center, an older woman in her 70s was standing among the seated audience members. She had a silk scarf wrapped around her neck and wore a simple navy dress. But there was something in her posture, something in her eyes, that immediately caught Michael's attention. "Yes?" Michael responded immediately, his voice carrying the warmth and respect he had always shown for his audience. "What's your name, dear?" "My name is Eleanor," the woman replied, her voice clear but emotional. "Eleanor Chen from San Francisco. I'm a throat cancer survivor, too." "Eleanor from San Francisco," Michael repeated with immediate understanding and connection. "How long has it been since your treatment?" Eleanor touched her scarf gently, and in that gesture, Michael saw something he recognized: the unconscious protection of a place that had been violated by disease and medical intervention. 3 years, Eleanor said, tears beginning to form in her eyes. 3 years since they told me I might not speak again, might not be able to swallow normally, might not survive. The studio fell quiet. This wasn't just a fan sharing appreciation. This was one survivor reaching out to another about the most fundamental fear any human being can face. "But I have to ask you something that's been haunting me," Eleanor continued, her voice gaining strength through her emotion. "Everyone talks about your courage, about how you fought so bravely. But I need to know the truth. Were you really that strong? Because there were times when I wanted to give up completely." The silence that followed was profound. This wasn't just about cancer treatment or medical procedures. This was about the mental and emotional devastation that comes with facing your own death. Michael stared at Eleanor for a long moment, clearly wrestling with memories and emotions that he had kept largely private throughout his very public battle. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, quieter, more fragile, stripped of all Hollywood armor. "Eleanor," Michael said softly, "what I'm about to tell you, I've never said publicly in all the interviews I've done about my cancer." Without hesitation, without consulting producers or following any talk show protocol, Michael Douglas stood up from his chair and walked directly into the audience toward Eleanor. "May I sit with you for a moment?" Michael asked as he reached Eleanor's row. Eleanor nodded through her tears, and the surrounding audience members quietly made space. Michael sat down beside her, both cancer survivors now facing each other in this profound moment of shared understanding about mortality and survival. "To answer your question, Eleanor," Michael began, his voice now carrying the weight of hidden truth, "I wasn't strong at all. For the first 3 months after my diagnosis, I was ready to die." The studio audience gasped quietly. This was clearly far beyond what anyone had expected to hear from someone who had become a symbol of successful cancer survival. "I wrote letters, Eleanor," Michael continued, his voice growing more emotional with each word. "Letters to Cameron, to Dylan, to Catherine, goodbye letters. I sealed them and put them in my desk drawer, and there were nights when I was ready to mail them." Jimmy had left his desk and was now standing at the edge of the stage, clearly recognizing that they were witnessing something unprecedented in its honesty. "The pain wasn't just physical, Eleanor," Michael said, looking directly into her eyes. "It was the complete terror of losing everything. My voice, my ability to work, my identity as a husband and father. I felt like I was already dying, just waiting for my body to catch up." The emotion in his voice was palpable as decades of carefully maintained public strength gave way to the truth of private despair. "There were nights when I would sit in my study, looking at those sealed letters, and I would think about how much easier it would be for everyone if I just stopped fighting," Michael continued, his voice now thick with tears. "The treatments were hell, the uncertainty was unbearable, and I felt like I was putting my family through torture just to buy a few more months." Eleanor was nodding knowingly, clearly understanding this exact experience of wanting to surrender to death rather than continue fighting. "But here's the part I've never told anyone, Eleanor," Michael said, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a small, worn envelope. "This is one of those letters. I wrote it to Dylan, my youngest, because I couldn't bear the thought of him remembering me as weak and sick." He placed the envelope in Eleanor's hands. "I want you to have this, not to open it, but to understand that thinking about giving up doesn't make you weak, it makes you human." The studio was completely silent, except for the soft sounds of people being moved to tears by this unexpected revelation. "What changed your mind?" Eleanor asked quietly. "What made you decide to keep fighting?" Michael was quiet for a moment, clearly accessing memories that were still painful. "Catherine found me one night, sitting with those letters, and she didn't try to talk me out of my fear. She just sat with me and said, 'Whatever you decide, I'll understand, but don't decide tonight when you're in pain.'" The audience was completely silent, witnessing something that transcended entertainment and touched the core of human experience. "And Eleanor," Michael continued, "I realized that my children didn't need me to be brave. They needed me to be present, even if present meant scared, sick, and uncertain." He began removing his charcoal suit jacket. "Eleanor, this jacket has been with me through interviews where I pretended that cancer was just another challenge I had overcome. Tonight, it goes home with someone who understands that surviving doesn't mean you were never ready to surrender." Eleanor, now wearing Michael's expensive jacket, looked somehow validated, not because survival was easy, but because her thoughts of giving up were understood and forgiven. "And Eleanor," Michael concluded, I want you to know that every day I wake up and choose to be grateful for the voice I still have, the family that stood by me, the chance to sit here with you tonight. Not because I'm brave, but because I'm still here. Jimmy, his voice thick with emotion, addressed both survivors. This is extraordinary. You're talking about the difference between public strength and private terror, about the courage it takes just to wake up and face another day. Michael turned to address the cameras directly. To anyone watching who's facing illness, who's had thoughts of giving up, who feels guilty for being scared, you're not alone. Being afraid doesn't make you weak. Sometimes staying alive is the bravest thing you can do, even when every part of you wants to stop fighting. The show ended differently that night. No standard closing monologue, no promotional segments. Just Michael and Jimmy sitting with Eleanor as the credits rolled, three people connected by the understanding that survival isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and choosing to continue anyway. When the episode aired 2 weeks later, it became one of the most watched Tonight Show segments, featuring a Hollywood veteran in the show's history. The hashtag #JobsMichaelDouglasLetters trended globally as millions of viewers shared their own stories of suicidal thoughts during illness and the importance of seeking support during medical crises. Eleanor became an advocate for cancer patient mental health, speaking at oncology centers about the reality of wanting to give up during treatment and the importance of honest discussions about fear and death with medical teams and family. Her message resonated particularly with older cancer patients who felt pressured to maintain a brave facade while privately struggling. She always wore Michael's jacket to these appearances. Michael never spoke publicly about changing his approach to discussing his cancer experience, but those close to him noticed something profound had shifted. In subsequent interviews, he began acknowledging more openly the psychological devastation of serious illness, the reality of suicidal thoughts during treatment, and the importance of mental health support during medical crises. The impact of that conversation extended beyond Michael and Eleanor. Cancer treatment centers began incorporating discussions about mental health and suicidal thoughts as standard parts of patient care, recognizing that addressing these issues directly could save lives beyond just treating the disease itself. The sealed letter that Michael had given to Eleanor became a powerful symbol in cancer support communities. Evidence that having thoughts of giving up doesn't mean you've actually given up. Eleanor often told audiences that she never opened the letter, but kept it as a reminder that survival sometimes means postponing the decision to quit for one more day. And every time someone praised Michael for his courage during his cancer battle, he thought about Eleanor Chen and the night he finally admitted that courage isn't the absence of fear or the desire to give up. It's choosing to stay when everything in you wants to leave, recognizing that thoughts of surrender are part of the human response to overwhelming circumstances, and that sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is simply wake up tomorrow and try again.